Conversation with John Conenna is sponsored in part by Venus Travel Incorporated in Chicago, the agency that has served the Chicagoland area for over 55 years, which is still owned and operated since 1968 by the Conenna family. Again, Venus Travel, the premier agency for over 55 years, is a proud sponsor of A Conversation with John Conenna. And now, on to our episode. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. Today, we are truly honored and thrilled to have on one of the top leading lawyers here in Illinois, in our Chicagoland area, in Illinois also, Michael V.Favia, well-respected a lawyer here in Illinois, basically has been practicing for over 41 years. And Mike, of course, is has a variety of experience of a lot of different perspectives. Of course, connected with health law, litigation, as a licensing attorney here in Illinois. But the main focus here today, we're going to talk about Mike's early roots, his career, a little bit about our families, and we're going to get right into it of how this man became so prominent. Mike, good to see you. And what is going on, young man?
Hi, John. First of all, I have to say thank you for letting me come and share some of our history together, because as the audience may or may not know, I've known you probably 60 years.
Yes.
Even though I'm not even 60 years old and you're not either, but many, many years, at least
Yeah.
5+ decades.
You know what, Mike? And I got to say, I will remember one of the first times I met you. It was on Chicago Avenue. I want to say it was either Hamlin or Avers, when your great father, who had a great relationship with my father, Nicola Favia and Vincenzo Conenna. Sometimes I think about those days, and when I came to see you one time, I think you were helping Dad in the summer on that street when Dad had his body shop there on Chicago Avenue.
Exactly.
I got to ask you, are you born and raised in Chicago, or were you born in Italy?
No, I was born in the United States. I was born in Chicago. My parents came from Italy, Bari, Carbonara in particular, and my dad served the U.S. Army here and went back, met my wife, knew my mom, not my wife, his wife, my mom, and then came back and then brought her over in 1955 or so. They lived around Ogden and Grand, a very
prominent Italian neighborhood.
Barese area, exactly. And I was born in that area. And then eventually they moved closer northwest to Grand and Pulaski area. Went to Our Lady of the Angels Parish, which many Italians from that era came from that particular parish, Chicago Avenue, Pulaski. And that's kind of where I grew up until I went to law school. So that's where I pretty much stayed until college and end of college law school.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, because I know my Nancy, my older sister Nancy, also went. We were in that same area. Right. I think that's how our parents met, and that's how my dad would always say, "I'm going by Nicola Favia." How does it start for you in the sense of this? Because I mean, you have gotten to a level here that is just amazing. I mean, you are well respected in your field. I mean, I've talked to many people, of course, being very close, our businesses and everything else, but your name constantly comes up. And I tell you, I think I did this with someone else. I'm just looking at my notes here today. I might need a part 2 before we even do a part 1. But I have to ask you, was the attorney law end of it, do you start to have a thing that, I could do this by the time you got to high school? What was the thought? Because this is just tremendous, this background.
So interesting. Obviously, it arose out of my family relationship. My dad was a businessman, so I had a sense of dealing with people, and I was very good at dealing with people, and I knew how to talk well and articulate. And my dad and my mom both were very much pro education, even though neither of them went to any college at all. And I think my dad basically did 2 years of high school, and my mom maybe did 3 years. So it's not like we came from a very educated family. It's mostly a business family, because even back in Italy, my families on both sides, my mom and dad's sides, were business people. But it just seemed like people who knew me and my family always said, "You're going to be a lawyer. I think you're going to be a lawyer," maybe because I knew how to articulate myself and could stand up to an argument and debate well, and I was a good student, even though uh, you know like everybody else, we had our times, but I was always a good student and very rarely in trouble. So that kind of helped too.
And I got to ask you, I got to tell you this, because when you were going through the process, when you, of course, and of course, we both have something in common. I mean, we went to Loyola University,
Right.
of course, at different times, but we went to Loyola, and then I know you go on to further your, of course, the law degree at John Marshall. Is that correct?
That's correct. And by the way, before I forget, your dad was one of the people who wrote a letter of reference for me to get into law school. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, and I remember my dad saying, I think it was Judge Caruso, or I can't remember, the alderman or something. He had to write a letter, but I'll never forget, you put a little bit of pressure on me, because my dad said, but when I was in high school, I want you to be like V.Favia. He goes, he is going to go places. My dad knew that about you. And I says, Dad, my dad says, John, you have the gift of gab. I go, I have the gift of gab, but I'm not as smart as Favia.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the truth is, your dad was like a relative to me. I felt like your dad was my uncle, because again, my dad and your dad did business together for many years, and I was your dad was a CPA, so my dad would use your dad as the CPA and travel agent as well. And so I was the middle guy, because my dad was busy doing his profession.
Right,
And
right.
So go by Vince, your dad. Bring over the papers and go over with him. And if he's got any questions, let me know. So I became the middle guy. And so I got to know your dad really well.
Yeah, he did. He
highly respected him and your family. And I did feel like he was like a relative.
He really was proud of you, my dad. I know your dad was too. So you go to high school where? Where do you go to high school?
Weber High School on the Northwest Side.
Okay, so you went to Weber. So now when you go to Loyola, do you start to take this now? Are there steps to be taken where?
So my idea was, I'm always have always been very pragmatic. So I thought, I'm going to get a business degree, and whether or not I go to law school, we'll see later. So I actually ended up with a business management degree from Loyola. And my first job was working as an insurance adjuster with State Farm, with the concept that they do a lot of legal related stuff as an adjuster. So I went down to Bloomingdale, where their headquarters was with State Farm, and got trained as an adjuster and learned laws and pertaining to personal injury at that time. And I actually enjoyed that. And I thought, well, this does sound something I'd really like to pursue. And so I went initially part-time in the evenings. John Marshall Law School had a part-time evening program for my first year. And I was doing pretty well, and I decided, okay, I'm finishing the program, went full-time. And that's how I became a lawyer.
Yeah. And taking that step, Mike, I mean, because, lawyer, for me, lawyer, doctor, pharmacist, these are heavy degrees. This is not something that, you're going to skate through like through a junior college. I mean, the studying is quite, I mean, I'm sure you gave up a lot.
Yeah, my eyes. I never needed glasses until law school. That's one thing I gave up.
And you gave up a lot of probably your free time.
Oh, yeah.
Studying.
Law school entails a lot of reading. College does too, but law school 3 times as much, because you're always, everything you do is reading, which I do like reading, but
sure,
it does take a lot of time.
How was that next step to Marshall? I mean, because this is one of the top law schools around.
Yeah, so my dad had clients who, some of them were lawyers and judges, and I just asked around, and I planned to stay in the city, so it was just a matter of which of the law schools in the city made sense for me. And John Marshall would always pop up, and a couple of the judges who my family knew very well went to John Marshall, and they highly recommended it. And they were willing to give me letters of reference, like your dad.
Right.
And I got a little scholarship from them to top it off. So I ended up going to John Marshall.
Do you wind up as soon as you graduate? Do you wind up working as a assistant state's attorney?
No. So my first job out of law school, I worked for a small firm, a small law firm, and it was, instrumental in me gathering a good wide area of law, because the firm did almost everything. So they did real estate, they did personal injury, they did workers' comp, they did estate planning. So I was able to get my beak wet in all these different areas to kind of decide which areas I wanted to work in and which I didn't. I decided I'm not doing divorce, because the divorce work I hated.
Right.
I did like the real estate. I did like the personal injury because of my background as an insurance adjuster. I had a pretty nice command of the tort laws, and also estate planning. And so those ended up being my 3 areas of general practice. And if we continue the conversation, I later, after a couple of years with the small firm, I was called by a political state senator, a local state senator who knew my family, and he said, we're looking for an attorney to work in our city, in the city council. And so I ended up working for the city of Chicago for 4 years in the city council of Chicago as one of the staff attorneys, and affiliated with a particular committee. I was the attorney for the Housing and Neighborhood Development Committee for the city of Chicago for 4 years in the early 1980s. So I did that for a few years, and my dream was always to go to the Attorney General's office. So I kept looking at them, and I finally got a call from them, and I was hired by the Attorney General's office in their fraud division. So I stayed there for a couple of years, and then continued. Then I got recruited again to the Illinois Department of Professional Regulations, which is the state agency that regulates Illinois professionals. So that's kind of where I developed my niche in representing professionals.
And I gotta tell you, just listening to this, I mean, because I wondered how you were able to have all these perspectives.
Yeah.
So this, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, this really wasn't the norm for how you did it was almost kind of unique, because you got yourself experience in so many different fields where, when I was going to school, the guy goes, yeah, well, I'm studying civil rights. Okay, I'm going to be a criminal lawyer. Yeah, I'm a real estate lawyer. But you went about it a different way. Was that first one that you got when you were with the city of Chicago, that was a big step? Wouldn't you consider that a big step for you?
Yeah, it was a great experience. I loved it. Not only was the job very interesting, I learned how the city and government really works, right? So you're an attorney working within the system, not just watching from the outside. So it is true. It's who you know in the city of Chicago. It has been, and I'm sure it still is. I'm not there obviously anymore, but knowing somebody, knowing the system, knowing how to cut corners and red tape is a very effective tool for any professional, especially an attorney. So that's one of the reasons I always felt I was very effective in working with city related stuff and state related stuff, because I kind of understood the system. And over time, you develop some good contacts, and those contacts are for life for the most part.
Sure. And again, just, again, listening to you about that, it's what a, geez, I mean, you must have, like you could go to I always kind of laugh when we talk, and I don't like talking politics. And of course, I don't like talking religion, but you go talk to somebody, oh, they do it this way, they do it that way. But you really knew the ins and outs of the city, where if you were talking to the average Joe like me, you're saying, John, it's kind of done this way. And there's just,
you're kind of guessing. I actually know how it works. I actually saw it in action. And, that was an era where probably even more than today, knowing somebody got things done. I mean, just got things done.
Question that I was going to ask you later in the podcast, I want to ask you now. From that incept of when you got started, are the changes rampant now from what you saw, let's say in 1982 to now?
So I think it would appear that things are a lot different, but I suspect if I were to work there now, maybe some of the mechanisms might be different, but I doubt that it's changed a whole lot. I think it's still, very important who you know and what buttons to press.
What buttons to press?
Yeah, I mean, that's just government. I mean, that's never going to change. It's always been that way since the beginning of governments, just knowing people. And I mean, I'm not talking about doing anything improper, just knowing how to pick up the phone and knowing who to talk, how to talk to them, because you know what they're going through, so you could relate to them. And if they kind of give you a little hard time, you go, yeah, I've been there. I know how that works.
Sure.
And then you manage to have a reasonable conversation with somebody that might be resistant in the first place. So there's some skills there that are always going to be with you, working internally and then coming out. But the fact is, I think even when I do represent somebody with a city problem or a state problem, I mean, just knowing people, just who to call, just saves time and clients money, frankly.
Exactly. What was that time where you thought, I mean, I know you come out of that, John Marshall, you're telling me about these early choices that you made, and there were some great ones here. But do you ever say to yourself, okay, that year or that time, or, where you finally say to yourself, okay, I'm V.Favia. I've arrived. I got this. Do you remember when you had that, okay, I got this, that maybe that era where you felt comfortable with one of those,
Probably when I got to the Attorney General's office, because that was one of my, goals to work with the Illinois Attorney General's office. So
Sure.
I thought, okay, this is a pretty great accomplishment for myself to reach here. I always had wanted to work at that office. I thought it was a nice office to work, impressive, and they do a lot of great things. And then when I was recruited to be the chief attorney at IDFPR, I mean, that was pretty decent step up too, because
I think very prestigious. Yeah.
I'm overseeing I think at that time like 20 attorneys and investigators, and this was a statewide agency that oversaw all the professions, including doctors, nurses, pharmacists, realtors, insurance brokers. I mean, so they had over 50 different professions. Now, I didn't supervise all those areas, but I was involved one way or another with many of them. But I did supervise the healthcare area, so that's why I do have a little focus on healthcare law and healthcare representation of health-related matters.
Yeah, I've noticed now
this
healthcare has become a big cog for you. Is that the word to use? A big
yeah, that's a big niche, just because I of my background in that area. I had to become pretty familiar with medical malpractice. Every medical malpractice in the state of Illinois has to be reported to IDFPR. So if there's a settlement or any judgment out of any of the courts in the state of Illinois, all get processed through IDFPR. And as the chief attorney and basically the technical advisor of the state's medical licensing and disciplinary board, I was part of the review of all these medical malpractice cases across the state. So, and that was pretty significant. So I had to learn medicine quickly to at least understand what some of these cases were about.
So yeah, you basically had to go back to school for something like this, right? Or study?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So, pretty much. I had to take classes and seminars on health related medicine and health related matters and stuff like that. Yes.
Yeah, no, and what a niche this is, Mike, because just reading, and I think I've been following some of the podcasts that you have been on with this. Amazing. How many law, if you don't mind me asking, how many law firms did you work before we open up Michael V.Favia and Associates?
Well, just the one in the beginning, the small one I told you, my first law firm.
Okay.
And then after I left IDFPR, at a certain point in my career, I thought, oh, I'm done with government. It's time to be a private lawyer. I hooked up with a firm called Quinteros, Prato, Wood and Boyer. It's a national firm that basically they're an insurance defense firm, but they do a little bit of everything. So they represent people in medical malpractice cases and stuff like that. But they do a general civil and criminal. They do white collar criminal cases. So I am still involved with them. I'm of counsel to their firm, meaning that I'm a kind of a consultant to their firm. So I'm still involved with them, and that's they have about, it's not a huge firm, but it's big enough, about 400 to 500 attorneys across the country.
Wow.
So
I've seen some of the just the accolades toward you from across these people across it, because I have a little surprise for you at the end, across the country that have, the respect they have for you and your knowledge of this. But this health thing, like I said, has become really a big thing. When does Mike Favia, was it about 25 years ago now, or are we going on 30 that you open up your own law firm?
No, about 20.
20, yeah. And again, that just comes from the knowledge and the vast experiences you've had, correct? I mean, was it a big decision in your life to do this? I mean, or did you always want to do this?
I knew eventually I would want to be in private practice, my own boss. I just again, because of my family being have their own businesses all along, I knew eventually one of my next goals was to have my own business, and and I do have great affiliations with other law firms. I do work. As you know, I do some real estate taxation appeals, but I'm of counsel. I work with Marian Localo, who you may have interviewed. I know he's a friend of.
Yeah, I have not, but I know the firm. Yes.
Yeah, so they're a very prominent real estate tax appeal firm that I happen to work with and have been working with for years, and we kind of share business together. And Leonard Amari is one of my mentors. He's president of everything. He's been president of the Illinois State Bar, president of the Justinians. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other accolades. So I feel he's been one of my mentors in the legal field.
Speaking of that, I'd like to answer the question of the mentor. You brought up Leonard Amari, of course. Do you have some of these people who, of course, when you started out, now are coming to you for advice? Do you have that now because they see how you've progressed? I mean, isn't that amazing? Could you just tell us, wow.
It's ironic. The first firm I worked for, there were two principals there. One is deceased now, but the other one's still around. His name is Ken Piggott, and you may know him because he was pretty prominent in the west side of Chicago. He had a firm, I'm trying to remember. It was a neighborhood business, North Avenue in Austin area, something like that. Okay, so he is now pretty elderly and semi-retired, but whenever he gets calls, he'll call me and, Mike, how would you handle this, or do you want to handle it? Actually, that's more likely what happens now. He just says, I'm not doing these anymore. I'm kind of semi-retired. Can you handle this for me? And so he'll just pass them on to me because I think he owns property, so he's rather do that than practice law actively.
And Mike, this is a gentleman that when you were
it was my first boss out of law school. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you talk about the honor of honors. It's always something like that. I feel.
I'm honored when he calls me. It's that's great. And I've had other people I worked with in the city and the state that will call me and either refer to cases to me or ask me, questions about how I would handle something. So yes, I do get those calls, and you may or may not know I ended up being on the board of trustees at John Marshall Law School.
Yes.
And so part of my role on the board, I was interacting with the students and professors and stuff like that. So I ended up being somewhat of a mentor in that capacity as well.
Well, I got to say this before we go back to you for a minute. I mean, I don't know how you've done all this, and you've done it just tremendous work where, how you've litigated and everything else. But here, you are past vice president, board of directors of the Institute of Medical Medicine in Chicago here. Former president of Justinian Lawyers.
Yeah.
Here in Chicago. Of course, you just said you're one of the board members at the John Marshall Law School.
I was also president of the Alumni Association.
Past trustee and chair of the Legal Affairs Committee at the Illinois College of Optometry. Past president of the Alumni, John Marshall. I'm just reading these off here. Congrats, you. And then these awards that you've gotten. I just like to know. You might have a banquet hall for awards because besides your home, a Distinguished Service Award from John Marshall, Congressional Order of Merit, highly recommended, leading lawyer designation. When I set up this interview with you, I know you were saying, hey, a little bit of time now, I'm getting away from a lot of these things. You made time for all of this. And can I say it, and you can feed off this, it's your work ethic, correct?
Yes, it's just my work ethic growing up in a family or Italian-based family where work was part of your life. When everybody else was out partying, I was working, and I wouldn't change that. That's what I did, and that's what I still do.
The drive to do this, Mike, you could tell just by our conversation here today, there's a passion. It's just not about one thing. What I noticed about you even over the years in conversations with if you don't want to tackle it, you've even told me in some cases, John, that's not my field, but I'm going to recommend someone else. Right. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. The drive is, what is the ultimate? What is you think your forte, your specialty in considering all these things that you've done?
It's as basic as I try to relate to the people I'm talking to. I like helping people. If I could help someone, I go out of my way to help them because that's how my family was. That's how my dad was. That's how your dad was. If you had a question or an issue, I remember so many times your dad would say, well, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. And he would kind of recommend ideas, or as I said, that's just what we grew up doing. Just helping people, helping each other. And I think a lot of that is part of my ethos, so to speak.
What's in the future for you as we look down the road? I know we are, I always say to people now that we're in this, last quarter, but I don't see a Mike Favia leaving anytime soon, just like any of us. Is there something that you would still like to do before you say this ball game's over?
Start up a travel agent? No.
Wait a minute. Where's the key?
I'm just kidding. That's the last thing I want to do. I know your job is so hard.
You have a beautiful head of hair. I have a round spot behind me. No, but
I don't know. I've toyed with the idea of becoming a judge or something like that. But I'm comfortable doing what I do, and I like to just have more time for myself and the family now. That's why I am kind of getting away from some of the organizational things, the group things, and so I have more time for the family.
If you don't mind me going back to this, have you really flirted with the thing of being a judge? Because I can see you being that judge. Have you flirted with the idea in your mind?
I did, and in fact, I've been asked to if I were interested in running. I've been comfortable doing what I do, and I think as significant and prestigious as a judge would be, it does. I see other judges. I have friends who are judges. It changes your life because there are certain things you can't do anymore. Certain people you can't help anymore. It's different than being an advocate for someone. You basically have to be neutral and be very careful what you say or do with people. And it's not my real personality. I think there are positions in the judicial system I could fit, but
Sure.
but right now I'm comfortable with what I'm doing.
I can see you. I got to ask you something with if you can mention it or not. I'll give you maybe give me two. Is there a case that, you worked hard at it? It was, even one or two cases that you worked hard at it and you got it done. And there was that fulfillment for V.Favia. There was that fulfillment when you came home that you knew your family knew you went what you went through, but it was the case that you really, dotted the I and they crossed that T. Was that, do you remember something, like that really grasped you that said, wow.
Well, I prosecuted a few really bad apples. I mean, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but
yeah, just something that again makes you feel like
well, there was a real bad guy downstate. He was a real bad doctor, and he was doing a lot of kinky stuff with younger female patients, and I was driven to put him out of business and make sure he went to jail. So that was a case that I just thought I saved a lot of people a lot of harm and hurt going down. It was very similar to that case out in Pennsylvania with the doctor. I forgot his name right now. The one that was abusing his sports
okay
gymnastics. Yeah,
gymnastics.
Yeah. So and this was downstate. It wasn't as large of a situation like that, but it was going on for quite a while. So I had that case, and then I had a couple where I represented some folks who, they were wrongly being charged with some stuff, and I defended them, and people didn't think that I would be successful, and I was, and so those you remember some of these bigger cases that I was successful in doing my job as a prosecutor and then as a defense attorney.
I love the way how you broke that down. I mean, that's fantastic. And Mike, when you like the one you mentioned downstate and the one you're mentioning now, it's on your desk. You have this overwhelming evidence that this is wrong, correct? I mean, it's clear cut, correct? Where you go, okay, enough is enough. I got this.
Right. Well, yeah, but I also learned in the law, there's always two sides to a story. So even when you have a great case in your mind, and there have been some great cases that I thought, wow, this is a slam dunk. There's always another side to the story. So I'm very cautious with maturity to kind of, don't overpromise anything, because you really don't know the whole story until you know the whole story. Because as other attorneys who have done what I do, or just most attorneys know this, you're only hearing one side of the story, and unless you anticipate that there is another side of the story, or at least an argument of another side of the story, you're not doing your job. So you have to be a good attorney in litigation, in particular, where you have an adversary kind of relationship with another party. You have to anticipate and try to figure them out just as much as you have to figure out your own client and everybody else involved, the judge, the other parties, the jury, whatever it may be.
Sure.
But a good attorney needs to have a good sense of everybody that's involved in the lawsuit, and not just your own client. And I tell you that because I think that's one of the failures of young attorneys. I think until you get a little maturity, a young attorney gets a client, whether you're a prosecutor or defense, and you hear your side of the story, and you're all in on that bet. Now, maybe you should do that, but that's not being a smart attorney if you're not trying to anticipate what the other side's going to say, or what you might hear from them, and be prepared to counter it. So it is sort of a chess game. I mean, it's not just a checker game. You make your moves, and a chess game, you have to anticipate their next 3 or 5 moves.
Right.
So
exactly.
I think that's an effective lawyer in that field. With the other area, real estate and estate planning, that's more of a, just understanding what your client needs. For instance, if a client comes in, and I'm talking about that more now, because as I get older, I'm doing more and more of that type of work as my clients I've got older, I'm doing more estate planning, more wills, trust, and real estate. And so, but I think still a good attorney needs to kind of understand all the players in the transaction. You know, what does the family, would be best for you, your family, your kids, your grandkids, and just kind of just reading between the lines is a very significant skill I believe a good lawyer should have.
You know, and I have to tell you, in dealing with other attorneys over the years, if you had to put a percentage on it, because in the sense of a case, if I'm wrong, in the sense of a case, dealing with another attorney, do you find them to be that they want to work with you, or do they find it to be, no, we're going to do it my way, or I'm going to do it your way? Do you find that there's a cohesiveness or no? Over the years.
Yeah. I think it depends. There's some attorneys that their approach is it's my way or no way. And then there's some attorneys, I think the older attorneys, the more mature attorneys are more open-minded because they're kind of looking for a solution that everybody could live with rather than just going in and throwing bombs and, you know, blow everything up and see what happens. I think, as I said before, I don't know if that's the best in my mind.
Your mind.
In my opinion, I don't think that's the best approach. To go in burning bridges and, you know, hope for the best. I think the better approach is kind of trying to anticipate things and finding a route that everybody could live with. Yeah.
Last question before I want to do say something, play a little game with you, and then we'll something that someone said about you. But last question. Over the years now, let's say take it from 82, and I love to go back at the onset of this with you because how you started this great career. From 82 to now, do you see that laws are really now more and more being manipulated? Like it could be right there in blue and black, but for some reason it gets, do you see more of that now in the 2000s than you saw it in the 90s?
Yeah, I would say yes, but you know, back then I probably would have said the same thing because
yeah, okay.
So the thing is, and I mentioned it earlier, there's so many different ways to look at a particular language in the law. I think a good attorney will be able to kind of use the language in that statute to benefit his client or her client.
Sure.
So that's why you're always going to need lawyers, and there's always two sides, at least two sides to a story. And say, well, the statute is black and white. It says A, B, C. Well, my colleague may say, but my client sees it as, you know, ABC doesn't mean what you think ABC means. And that's why there's judges, and that's why there's litigation. I'm a fan of trying to find a middle ground, and that's why if I were a judge, I'd probably be good in finding a way to resolve cases. But you know, when we're advocates for our clients, we're looking at that, maybe that same set of facts, the same statute, the same, you know, scenario, and coming up with two different arguments. I mean, we don't want to talk about politics, but you know, look, you know, the Trump lawyers versus the ones that are against them. They both looked at the same statutes and the same laws, and they came up with different conclusions. I mean, I'm not going to say who's right or wrong because it's immaterial, but the point is, they probably both believed what they were advising their clients, and we'll find out what a court thinks, and then guess what? Another court above it may think differently. So their appeals, because a judge may disagree with other judges, and so ultimately it keeps going up and up. And aren't we looking at the same set of facts? Aren't we looking at the same set of laws? It's just how you interpret them.
It's how you interpret them. Unbelievable. Thank you so much for saying all what you just said on these two questions, because that's what it's really about. I mean, that's really, exactly. I want to say what a person said about you, because it really depicts V.Favia, and then we're going to play a little game of 5 questions about some of your favorite things in your life. So I just want to read something to you from a gentleman, and I'll mention his name at the end. Mike has built his career and his reputation by being honest and trustworthy professional who takes his practice very seriously, while still finding the time to serve the Chicagoland community on various boards of directors and with top-notch organizations in his town. V.Favia is well respected, is a good person, and is a great lawyer. I can't think of a better definition, Mike Favia, of you since the first day I met you. That comes from Nick Augustine out of the Texas area, who you are affiliated with. When I read that, I got goosebumps, and I got them again today. That is the definition of Mike Favia. And Mike, this is just a tremendous honor for me to have you on here today. The career, I got to ask you something. I would love to do a part 2 with you because we've only just scratched the surface here today, but it's the surface that I really like that we scratched.
Well, I appreciate those kind words, and what can I say? Anytime you need me to have a chat, you have my phone number. Just call.
Oh, for sure. Okay, listen, we're gonna play a game of 5 questions. You can answer them or not, or you could call a lawyer and sue me. Anyway. But here's the first one. Okay. What is Mike Favia's favorite movie that he could watch 200 times without getting bored?
The Godfather series. I just enjoyed the history. I mean, there's the Italian heritages and different things that come into those movies. Yeah, I like the Godfather.
The whole trilogy, starting with Brando, down to the end with Garcia. No, I agree with you. Okay, second question. If you had to interview somebody in your lifetime that you always wanted to interview, or just even for those 30 minutes or 20 minutes that you want to interview, and it can't be me, who would it be?
It's not going to be somebody in the law. The one I would really love to talk to one-on-one would be Warren Buffett.
Oh, wow.
I just think that guy is just amazing what he's done with he's in finance. For those of you that may not know, he's one of the wealthiest guys in the world.
Yes.
And he started with a relatively regular life like ours in Omaha, and just was a smart guy and built up a kingdom, monetary kingdom that is barely surpassed. And he still lives in the same house in Omaha. I went to visit it. So I went to Omaha to one of the annual meetings just because I like to listen to what he has to say, and he just always has some good seeds of wisdom to pass on at his meetings. And went to visit his house, and it's a nice house. It's not a dinky house, but it's not what you would expect a multi-billionaire. And he just seems like I don't know, maybe it's all fictitious, but he just seems like a nice guy.
Question 3. What is your favorite Italian meal that your mom made?
Pastas. One of the pastas, pasta asciutto with braciole and meatballs, and she made great bracioles and meatballs. And the other one would be it's not a full meal, but it's panzerotti.
I can imagine. And I hear she's doing very well these days still.
Yeah, she's doing well. Yeah. You said my mom, right? Yeah.
Yeah, about mom. Yeah, I go.
My mom just celebrated her 90th birthday last week.
Incredible. Yeah, I remember her very well and just saw some pictures of her. All right, you're going to be honest with me because I think you kind of know about me. Who's your favorite team? And be honest, because I came out of the closet. Cubs or Sox?
What? I'm sorry. What was it?
Who's your favorite team? Cubs or Sox?
Cubs, just because I'm a Northwest Sider, but I'm one of those guys that likes both teams. I'll cheer them both on. I have no ill will against the Sox. I hope they do well as well. But
they got a lot of problems.
When they're playing each other, I'm a Cubs fan.
Yeah, I think Saturday night they were about to call you when Anderson got into the fight.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, mine is okay. Last question. I got to ask you. What is the biggest thing? And we talked about mom, of course, with the food, but what is the biggest thing? Is it faces me every day. There's a day doesn't go by that I don't think about my father. But what is the biggest thing that you remember, and what Nicola Favia, your father, gave to you?
He had a good heart and could relate to everybody and anybody. I mean, there was nobody that he could not relate with. It didn't matter, male, female, black, white, Italian, Irish. I mean, he just was a good people person and just got along with everybody. And all those years that I worked with him at his shop or just
Yeah.
events, I never recall anybody saying anything bad about him. I mean, he just was a great guy.
That's a very nice way to end it. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on, Mike. This has truly been an honor. Your
Thanks for the
career-
opportunity, guys.
Yeah, I know, but your career has just been outstanding in law and all the things that you've done and the diversification that we've talked about today and some of the things you broke down that I didn't even know about you after all these years. But your record really speaks for itself. You are one of the finest lawyers in Illinois, and I can see why people respect you and go to you. And again,
well, and vice versa. I think very highly of you and your family. You are part of my family, and
yeah, we
will
both
always be. And I know you have that same soul that my dad had and your dad had, and just there to help people. So
a lot of great memories.
good for you.
Listen, we're going to get this out on social media. And Mike, thank you so much. And
Thanks again, John. Always a pleasure. Call me anytime.
I will. Thank you, Michael. Good night, everyone.